Well, maybe time for that bridge to be renamed. Now, John Lewis had close ties to and enormous respect for the American Jewish community. But that aspect of his legacy has unfortunately been, I would say, done wrong the past month by a trio of African-American celebrities who have expressed anti-Semitic sentiments. But perhaps even more egregious was a post tweeted by Rodney Muhammad, head of the Philadelphia branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, seemingly in defense of the rapper Ice Cube, pro footballer Deshaun Jackson, and TV host Nick Cannon. There's photos are seen above this hideously caricatured cartoon of a Jew, and the quote, "To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize." Now, that is attributed there in that post to the French philosopher Voltaire, but actually derives from a neo-Nazi white supremacist. Now, Muhammad later removed the tweet, and he issued this statement. "I was not familiar with the image at the bottom of the post. I was responding to the individuals not able to speak out. I have worked with many in this city over the years. I would be happy to have a discussion with other leaders to better understand our history." Well, joining us now from Philadelphia is Shira Goodman. She's the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League in that city. Thank you for joining us, Shira. First of all, your response to Rodney Muhammad's comment that I just read out that he issued after taking down that tweet.
Yes, thanks for having us. We don't really see that as an apology. And if you look at Mr. Muhammad's other social media, he has a history of anti-Semitic statements, memes, videos. And so even if he didn't understand what this meant, he seems to have sent a clear message about what he thinks about the charge of anti-Semitism. So we're very disturbed. He is in a position of leadership in a storied civil rights organization, and that's very dismaying to us.
Right. I want to clarify, because some Jewish groups and individuals have called for Rodney Muhammad to resign, or for the NAACP to have him resign from a post where he's supposed to be, of course, fighting against all forms of racism. What is the position? Does the ADL feel that he has to step down from that position?
So we are usually not in the business of calling for specific discipline, for calling for people to be fired or resign. You talked about the Deshaun Jackson situation. We didn't call for specific discipline there either. This is something that the NAACP has to make a decision about. We've been in contact with them. I've talked to some of the other chapter leaders in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and we need to wait to see what they do. Other organizations have made strong statements calling for either a resignation or a firing, and that's within their right. Like I said, right now, we want to call out the behavior. We are thanking the people and the organizations who have stood with us to call this out. There are many Black elected officials who have taken really strong stances over the weekend when this came to light, and we're grateful for their support, and we'll wait to see what the NAACP does.
Shira, one disturbing aspect of this and why it deserves notice, I guess, without making any excuses or rationale, it's one thing for a football player, a rapper, an entertainment celebrity to make statements or put out these social media tweets that we've seen in the past month. But from the head of the branch of the NAACP in a major city in the United States, I mean, how does one even understand that?
I think you're right. It's really inconceivable that somebody who is theoretically leading a civil rights organization, who, as you said, their job is to fight against all forms of racism and hate. It's just inconceivable that this could happen, and that he wouldn't, really acknowledge the wrong that's done there. And again, I don't think that he has. So right now, we're trying to move forward. Again, we're grateful for the folks who have spoken out about this and have acknowledged how serious this is, and expressed the same kind of shock and dismay that you're expressing. I'm sure your viewers are. And we're working with our Black Jewish Alliance of the Philadelphia ADL and others to move forward and to make sure that the forces that would seek to divide the Black and Jewish communities don't succeed in doing that. We have a long storied history of standing up for each other, for fighting in the civil rights movement, and we need to continue to build on that as we move into the future.
Right. I want to broaden this out a bit, Shira. You raised what you call the Black Jewish Alliance. We certainly are. The United States is certainly in a very sensitive moment in its history when the greater society is trying to address decades, if not centuries, of racial injustice against African Americans and people of color. And certainly the Jewish community has been a part of that struggle, or parts of the Jewish community. The ADL certainly. But at the same time, trying to address when sometimes rhetoric can cross the bounds into rhetoric that is either hurtful or anti-Semitic. How is the ADL handling, I guess, something of a balancing act at this point in history and in its history?
I think that's a great question. I think you're right. We stand at a special, unique moment where the United States is struggling with systemic racism. Jews are part of that fight, but we are partners in that fight. And so something like this, like a post, like you said, from a football player or a rapper might seem not as significant, but we're looking at the broader context. We want to do that education and outreach work. We want to be good allies and partners on both sides of that equation. And we don't want to allow those incidents to kind of destroy the work that's being done. So our Black Jewish Alliance did a program on allyship. We're bringing in speakers. We're promoting how do you learn to be part of the fight against racism? What does it mean when somebody Black says something anti-Semitic? What does it mean for a Jew to be part of the fight against racism? And have those difficult conversations. How do we be allies? How do we be partners? And how do we stand against hate together? And we try very hard not to get into who has suffered more, who's been injured more, whose history is worse, but what is the future that we're building together? And that's not always easy. Sometimes the conversations are difficult. Sometimes there are feelings and, relationships that are tested, but that's the hard work that the members of the Black Jewish Alliance and the people who are working with the ADL and standing with the ADL are committed to.
Right. As you say, Shira, conversations that may be difficult, but are certainly essential and arguably now in this period more than ever. Shira Goodman from the Anti-Defamation League there in Philadelphia. Thank you for joining us on i24 News.